So, are we allowed to think aloud here?
Yes.
Yes, you're allowed to think as aloud as you can.
Right.
Is that how could you discover morality without, because before we get into that, I'll tell you this, like religion doesn't just play a role in helping you get through your day-to-day life. I mean,
Absolutely.
religion, the way I look at it is that if you want to look at us as robots,
All right.
right?
Okay.
And God is the maker of the robots. Because for some reason, it's very difficult for people to think about it when we say we're creation and God is the creator. Okay, let's make it even more simple. We're a robot, and God is the maker.
Yeah, you are
Right?
the fact
Okay,
line.
well, let's like define religion first, right? Religion is like the sum and essence of your attitudes and beliefs towards the fundamental problem of human existence. It's the existential question, right? The answer is the existential question, and all of your beliefs and tradition and this is right and wrong. That's intertwined with there being a creator. It's one and the same thing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, I never knew. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I like that. So the way I look at religion personally is when the Quran comes down, it's a manual that basically says you're a robot. Here's how to use yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, put in some oil.
Kind of instruction. It's an instruction.
It's an instruction manual
Yeah.
as to how to use your body, how to use your robotic self to the best of its capabilities. Kind of like when Spider-Man, got his suit from Iron Man.
And he wasn't really sure what he was doing. With
And
it.
and he really
And he
needed-
all of a sudden started finding all these different features.
Right, all these different features, right? So that's kind of like once you dig deep into religion, you unlock more about yourself and understand more about the life around you. That's kind of how I look at it, right? And so stemming from that is, where do you get your morality from if it's not from religion, if it's not from a one being that is God that understands morality?
I think before you tackle that, it's like, do you think that if you think that humans are naturally good, then that's your inclination. You don't have to look outside of yourself. But if you think that man is naturally, as I believe, that selfish, as Thomas Hobbes put it, life is solitary, nasty, brutish, and short because people are self-interested, then that question becomes a lot easier for you.
I think before you go into it,
all right.
I'll just tell you my part real quick. I think humans are both good and bad.
I was going to agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't think there's one or the other. It's both, and that's where we see people. There's people who are inherently just bad. I don't know if it's something that's happened in their life or if they're just wired from birth, like they're just not good. And
Well, I think that's because when you have an infant, right, you have to teach them to be good. If we wouldn't have to teach kids if they were naturally good. When they have poor parenting, they don't learn to become good, and that's why you have those.
But I don't think all
product.
people who have poor parenting end up bad. I think that does injustice to people who just didn't have good parenting. You can't say that just because you had bad parenting that you're going to be inherently bad.
No. If you have bad, I think that bad people have bad parenting. It's a necessary condition, not a
I think
sufficient
that
Really,
condition.
I know a lot of people who are not good people who have great parents.
Yeah. Well, I think that's also a problem because nowadays, like with social media and stuff, it kind of really messes with people. But I agree with that. I know a lot of people who have really, really good parents, and they're just slightly out of tune with that. Like they don't follow the same beaten path that their parents wanted them to go down, but it's just kind of like who they are.
Right. And from my personal theological background, I understand from at least my interpretation of the Quran and what I've listened to is that, there's something called a soul within you, like the nafs in Islamic theology. And it pulls you. Like the soul has kind of two situations. It's what is the word for it? It kind of springs. It's kind of springy where it will just spring into action without thinking about it. It wants desires.
It's
wants
a fight
to
or
do
flight kind of thing.
Yeah. So that's one half, and then the other half is one that's more pulls you back and wants you to do good things and all that kind of stuff. So you have two sides of yourself always fighting with each other. One side that just wants to always just like, let me do this, let me do that, let me do that. This person just pissed me off. Let me call them this, let me call them that. Like all that kind of stuff, just jumping at things. That's one side of the soul, and then the other one kind of like trying to pull you back. And you're a constant battle within yourself with one of them. And it's kind of like what I believe is that you're born with 50-50. and then you kind of get to dictate whether it goes 65% on one side or 65%, 75%, 100%.
Sure. Absolutely.
I don't know if that's entirely consistent with Islamic jurisprudence, because obviously you have good pulling factors and bad pulling factors, but in the Quran it says you start off nafse amara, which is you are the animal, right? You start off and you're just in your primal features, right? You can only act on your impulses, and then you grow and you become nafse lawama, which is essentially you start to grow out of that and you can control your impulses. And then the final stage is nafse mutmainna, which means that you have become a spiritual being, and now you can control all those impulses. I definitely think it's a mix of both, but I think that inherently the human nature is we have to build up to that, where we are essentially only spiritual beings and we can control our impulses. Otherwise, you will live an animal life, and you will live only on your primal instincts.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you're a product of your environment. I think where you're from, who's raising you, and what you see in your young childhood is a huge factor, if not like the overarching factor of like what you're going to be. And I always believe in change. I think people can change. A lot of people, I think, have a hard time thinking that, but I think...
So you're more like a John Locke, like a tableau Rousseau, like blank slate, like mostly. That's how you're...
I think, yeah, when you come into this world, I mean, I think for few people, they're like hardwired. Yeah, but psychopath could go either way. Like, they could be psychopath in the sense that they're like amazing, and like they just are like their brain is so wired to being good that like like it just no bad not no bad thoughts, but just no bad ideas, kind of like. Or like,
well, that would just be like somebody who's like insane. That wouldn't be a psychopath, but that would be like
insane.
Who's
like,
just on a different level.
Yeah, they're like on that fine line.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think there's a few people out there who are just born just like angry and unhappy with the world, and I think the thought of like us not really knowing 100% why we're here, like we talked about earlier, why are we in this earth, I think that gets to a lot of people. I think that like the people who are really unsure, they've been going through it, people aren't nice to them and everything, and then you have those overarching thoughts of like, why are we even here? That's when people kind of get driven to doing really bad things.
Right, and again, Islamically, at least in my perspective, everyone's born Muslim, which means everyone is born with the innate self-righteousness, the goodness that God has put in them. I actually think, if anything, you're kind of born more towards good than you are towards...
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when you're born, you wouldn't be just bad.
You wouldn't...
You have no idea. You have no
pure, but I think that you're still... You haven't attained any spirituality, because all you care about is... an infant won't care if their mother starves, because they can't comprehend it, and because all they care about is their own needs.
Right, but that's also like the development of the self and the development of the soul. That has nothing to do with...
And like the true development of the brain.
Yeah,
we're not at like a point where you can understand things when you're born.
Right.
Like it's different.
So what you're saying was kind of like, yes, when you start off as a young child, you're kind of animalistic, right? In that you want to eat, drink, and poop, really, use the bathroom, and that's basically it. That's really what animals do. But then as you grow older, yourself and your mind grows, and that's why little kids don't have moral responsibility, either in religion or in law. Like, you won't find the governments.
You're not culpable until you're like 7, or then some things at like 14.
7 if you murdered someone. Like, it's
even
really
then,
it's very difficult even then.
No,
so
I mean, this isn't like, we're kind of like veering away from like, Islam. I don't necessarily know what Islam actually says. I haven't like researched it. There's not necessarily a definitive answer, but in my opinion, everything a human does is self-interested.
I don't agree. I don't agree.
I think for the charity,
Are we going into is altruism impossible?
I think
search up altruism real quick for people who don't know what it means.
Yeah, put that up on the screen.
Because when you give to charity, it's like, you do it for someone else, but also it's because it makes you feel good. It makes you feel good about yourself.
Right.
So it's like, it's essentially my point is like altruism is not really a thing.
So altruism
it can be
is
attained,
when we act to promote someone else's welfare, even at a risk or cost to ourselves. Though some believe that humans are fundamentally self-interested, aka quad, recent research suggests otherwise.
You don't have to read the second part.
Oh, I didn't even honestly. Okay, I didn't even see it going that way.
So, like, I mean, like, after reading that, like, the people who are in war who jump on that grenade to save everyone else in the room, what is your thought on that?
Yeah.
Are they doing it because they want to be a hero? Or because they, like, actually in their mind think, like, you know, this is, like this is what needs to be done? Like,
That's a good question. I don't know. I think maybe at that point, I think it might just be like instinct. Like instinct told them to do it. And I don't know if you necessarily have time to think in that situation.
So there you go. It says right there, people's first impulse is to cooperate rather than compete. That toddlers spontaneously help people in need of a genuine concern for their welfare. And that even non-human primates display altruism. No, dude, it's kind of like, oh, here's the thing. I've really been baffled by that question myself, and I've pondered over it a lot. And honestly, at the end of the day, like, I don't think Jesus was out of self-interest, peace be upon him. I don't think Muhammad was out of self-interest, you know, because those guys were born, raised, and died poor. They would never became...
If they weren't self-interested, I don't think they achieved what they were going for. I mean, at least
Yeah.
in their lifetime.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
You know-
if they were around now, then yeah, I think they got that.
No.
going.
What I'm saying is that it's possible to achieve it, but we're not naturally inclined to be altruistic. This is a philosophical debate that's been going on for centuries.
I think I could agree with that. I think, you know, like, if it came down to it and you had no, like, education, or depending on if everyone was raised kind of like in a dreary kind of mindset, then yeah, we definitely, I think we'd all be for ourselves. But do I think that, I mean, for the most part, I think there'd probably be a couple people in there who'd be like, all right, no, like, what are we doing? I mean, I think that's where society's really, I think that's really where society's come from. I mean, we wouldn't be here if we didn't have these thoughts. I mean, like, we would still just be killing each other.
And I think if what you're saying is completely true, the problem is then we would look at God and kind of be like, why are you punishing us if you naturally gave us this instinct to be bad? When I don't necessarily think that's the truth. I think that with what Max said earlier, whatever is nurtured becomes you. So you have 50-50, and whatever becomes nurtured out of that side, it really takes
Pulls
over.
it a little bit, yeah. And I, like this, I think altruism, like, I think that's definitely a product of your environment, where you've grown up, like the things that have happened to you, like how you're raised. And then I think religion plays a huge part of that too. You know, like if your religion, you know, charity, you know, that's a huge thing in religion. And like you said, you know, a lot of people do it for themselves because I feel like it wants them to...
it makes them feel good.
It makes them feel good.
Yeah.
And that's agreeable, but that doesn't mean it's wrong by any means.
Yeah, no, I think the fundamental state is that's where we're taking issue. I think that altruism is something you grow into, and it's product of what you've been taught. But that also brings up another point where you were saying, it was that I've been struggling with this because is everything we do we really have free will then? Because if you think about it, free will is essentially what this whole life is, right? We think that life is a test to get into heaven or hell, and to praise God or
Islamic theology.
Yeah, Islam. Yeah. So it's like, you know, if you think about it, your thoughts, your desires, you don't choose your thoughts and your desires. You don't choose what comes in your mind. And ultimately, when you're balancing everything, you know, I could slap Max right now, but I'm not going to do it because I'm balancing the interest. But my thoughts and my interests, that didn't come from me. I didn't invent that. That came from my thoughts. Like I didn't invent that. So it's like, are we dictated by our thoughts, and do we actually have control?
Determinism versus free choice.
Will,
okay, that's another huge subject. But before we get into that, like Bradley just pointed out another thing. This does not mean that humans are more altruistic than selfish. Instead, evidence suggests that we have deeply ingrained tendencies to act in either direction. Our challenge lies in finding ways to evoke the better angels of our nature. This is from Berkeley, by the way. Okay.
I think that's huge, because it's like, you know, if you think something's right, like that's kind of what that's saying. Like, you know, if we want to do the better thing in our nature, like kind of like what we think is the better way, like the high road, like that's how we're going to go about it.
Right. And let's dig into that quote, because I've struggled with that one a lot too. Yeah. And what I've ended up going is I think I really agree with Aristotle when he says every moral question lies in the middle. And here it is again, free choice or determinism. Which one is it? I think again it lies in the middle.
I think it lies in the middle because at the end of the day, I think, like you could go out and kind of just do whatever. But at the same time, are you really just doing whatever, or is that like some sort of like ingrained like mindset, Are you actually just being free? Like, we could just go on trips randomly. Like, have you seen like the Yes Theory? They just do things to do it,
Yes Man, the movie?
Yeah.
Well, no, well, Yes,
like, it's like if you flip a coin to do
yeah.
anything, like any decision I'm going to make, I'm going to flip a coin. But
Is that what Yes Theory is?
so the Yes Theory is a YouTube channel these guys have started, and they, they just kind of like when something comes up, they're like, we're doing it, we're saying yes. I mean, it's kind of on the principle of Yes Man.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and they just go on trips and such. But I mean, if you pull it up, it's just probably their YouTube channel. It's these 3 dudes.
Geez, they have 6 million subscribers just because of this idea.
Yeah, I mean,
pretty
they do
cool.
some pretty crazy shit. Excuse my language, but yeah. And like they go all over the world, and they're big about seeking discomfort. That's their motto: is seeking discomfort.
That's a really good, I like that mentality. That's really cool.
I think that's what I want to live by.
Could, yeah,
that's definitely something I want to live by.
I mean, if you think about it, religion is a lot of just sacrifice for the next life. I'm gonna fast for a month. I'm gonna get up in the morning to pray.
But how do you feel like what if I'm not saying you're wrong, but what if you're wrong and you didn't do a couple of things that you wish you had done in this life? Because that's something that you're willing to risk. I mean, you might be.
Yeah, that's where faith comes in.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
at the end of the day, it's like I think that people think that science does lead me to God, but at the end of the day, it's like my own where I'm pulled to. I feel like I'm just drawn to that, and I just think that I'm not gonna at the end of my life, I don't think I'm gonna regret making those sacrifices.
And the reason is that I've done I've done a lot of the things that people say are going to make you happy, all these desires. I've drank, I've smoked, I've done all of that kind of stuff. And it hasn't made me one bit happier. So...
Yeah, and certain things like that, yeah, I definitely can agree.
So it's kind of like, okay, so religion's actually making me happier.
Well, yeah, and I think religion in a strong point hit a good note in that sense. Is drinking, we'll put that into the point. Alcohol, it doesn't make you happy. It might put you into an altered state where you feel detached, not attached to your issues. But once you sober up, they're right back there with you. That's not something you can run away from.